wood strips, adhesive, tiny brushes, a little battery light for the center. I told her I thought we could make one. Not a perfect one. Just ours. For the next 3 months, that project became our place. Saturday mornings at the table with newspaper spread out like a drop cloth, blue paint on my wrist, silver glitter on her cheek, the smell of glue, the arguments about whether the windows should be round or square, the tiny victories when something delicate finally held. Wren took it seriously in the way children take love seriously, when they can feel it happening. She drew 3 versions before choosing the final shape. She insisted the base should look like waves instead of rocks because rocks felt lonely. She made me restart the railing twice because if one side looks careless, the whole thing feels sad. She wanted a warm light inside instead of a white one because white looked too much like a hospital. By the time we finished, it was slightly crooked and far from professional. It was also wonderful. At dusk, when we turned the little light on, the sea glass glowed soft blue and gold. Wren clapped it the first time she saw it from across the room and said, "It looks like it knows where home is." That is the sentence Donna was standing in front of when she laughed. She was staying with us for 2 nights because Mara's cousin was hosting a family anniversary dinner nearby, and apparently it made more sense for Donna to sleep here than drive back late. From the moment she arrived, the lighthouse bothered her. Not constantly. That would have been easier. She did it the way certain people do damage, in little taps. At dinner, she asked Wren whether she had any sports yet, or was she still doing art things. When Wren proudly said she wanted to make a whole coastline someday, Donna smiled tightly and said, "That's sweet, but you don't want to end up with a house full of dust collectors." The next morning, while I was making coffee, she touched the edge of the lighthouse base and said, "You know, when Mara was little, I never let her waste whole weekends on crafts. Children need structure." I said, "This is structure. It just doesn't look like yours." She gave me a look over the rim of her mug, the kind that said I had stepped half an inch out of line. Then came the real comment. Mara had taken Wren to the grocery store, and Donna and I were alone in the kitchen. She nodded toward the entry table and said, "I'm going to be blunt, because nobody else will be. You encourage too much whimsy in this house." I almost laughed, because whimsy is not a word I usually expect to hear as an accusation. But she kept going. "She's old enough to understand the difference between hobbies and nonsense," she said, "and frankly, you are too." I asked what exactly was nonsense about building something with my daughter. Donna sighed, already tired by the burden of correcting me. "It's not the object," she said. "It's what it teaches. Too much sentiment, too much softness. Too much sitting around pretending these little emotional rituals matter." I stared at her. Because sometimes a sentence is so ugly it takes a second to understand that someone really meant it. Little emotional rituals. That was what she thought she was looking at. Not patience, not creativity, not the safest version of attention a child can receive, just indulgence. I told her, calmly, that the lighthouse was staying where it was, and this conversation was over. She lifted one shoulder and said, "I'm only trying to help." People say that when they want credit for cruelty. The rest of the day was tense in that exhausted, family-gathering way, where everyone can feel the weather, but nobody wants to name it. At the anniversary dinner, Donna was gracious to strangers and clipped with me. Mara noticed, asked what happened, and I gave her the short version. She pinched the bridge of her nose and said, "I'll talk to her." But she didn't. Or if she did, it did not matter. That night, Wren asked if Grandma Donna hated the lighthouse. I told her no. Grandma just liked different things. It was a lie, and she knew it was a lie, but she was kind enough to let me say it. Before bed, she turned on the little light and asked if we should move it somewhere safer. I remember answering, "No one is going to touch it." I said that with the confidence of someone who still believes certain lines were too obvious to cross. The next morning, I woke up early because the house felt wrong. Not loud wrong. Quiet wrong. The kind where you notice an absence before you notice a sound. Donna's guest room door was open. Her overnight bag was gone. I assumed she had left early to avoid traffic. Then I stepped into the entryway. For a second, my brain refused to understand what I was seeing. The side table was bare except for glitter dust, splinters from the wooden base, and a scatter of blue glass across the floorboards. The brass railing had been bent nearly flat. The light sat a few feet away like an eye separated from its body, and in the middle of it all was a folded note. Not even an apology note. Just one sentence written in tight, angry pen strokes. You'll thank me when she stops learning to confuse sentiment with substance. I think shock is sometimes quieter than grief. I did not yell. I did not chase her. I did not even pick up the note right away. I just stood there looking at the wreckage and feeling something cold move through me. Because the message inside the message was so clear. She had not broken a decoration. She had corrected a household. Wren came out in her socks before I could stop her. She saw the floor. She saw my face. Then she saw the empty table. I will remember that silence for the rest of my life. Children recognize loss before adults finish explaining it. She did not scream. She just whispered, "Oh." Then, after a second, "Did it fall?" I wish I could tell you I found some perfect parent sentence in that moment. I didn't. I told her no. I told her Grandma Donna broke it. I told her it was not an accident. Her mouth tightened in that careful way it does when she is trying not to cry in front of people. Then she asked the question that made everything worse. Because she doesn't like me making things? That is the damage a child does to herself when an adult behaves badly. She looks for the part that must somehow belong to her. I got down on the floor and told her no, absolutely not. I told her this happened because a grown-up made a mean and wrong choice. I told her none of it belonged to her, but even while I said it, I knew some part of the injury had already landed, because what Donna destroyed was not only the lighthouse. It was Wren's assumption that the adults around her would recognize care when they saw it. Mara came downstairs a minute later. She took one look at the floor and said, "What happened?" I handed her the note. Her face changed in stages. Confusion, recognition, shame. Then the immediate, dreadful instinct to soften the thing before fully facing it. "She actually did this?" she asked. I said, "Unless the Lighthouse developed opposable thumbs and wrote a manifesto, yes." That was sharper than I usually speak to Mara, but I was shaking by then. She read the note again and sat down hard on the stairs. For a moment, nobody said anything. Then Mara asked if maybe her mother had thought the glass was unsafe, where Wren could reach it. I turned and looked at her. Not angry at first, just stunned. Because there it was, the family reflex, the lifelong muscle memory of translating violence into concern. I said if she thought it was unsafe, she could have spoken to us. She left before sunrise and wrote that note because she wanted us to know she meant it. Mara started crying then, which I know came from humiliation as much as grief. Donna had not only hurt Wren and me, she had dragged Mara back into the old position of daughter as buffer, daughter as explainer, daughter as cleaner of emotional blood. But I could not carry her first in that moment. Wren was kneeling on the floor, trying to separate the intact glass from the shattered pieces, with the solemn concentration of someone helping after an accident she didn't cause. That image nearly undid me. So I made coffee, got a shoebox, and sat with her at the table. We sorted what could be saved. A side panel, part of the painted roof, 3 little windows. The battery light still worked. Wren asked if we could rebuild it. I told her maybe. Then I told her something truer. "We can build something new," I said, "and no one gets to decide for us what counts." She nodded, but she still cried into her cereal a few minutes later when she thought I wasn't looking. That afternoon, Donna called Mara as if nothing unusual had happened. I could hear her voice through the speaker, brisk and self-righteous. When Mara asked why she had done it, Donna said, "Because somebody needed to." That thing was ridiculous, and the child is getting attached to fantasy instead of real life. The child. Not even Wren. Then came the part that made the comments in the original thread so explosive, and the part one know would drive viewers crazy in a retelling like this. Donna genuinely thought she had done responsible adult work. She said she was tired of visiting our house and seeing projects everywhere, and all this emotional clutter. She said I was teaching Wren to be fragile. She said Mara used to be more practical before marrying me. She said if we were upset, that only proved how necessary the lesson was. A lesson. There are people who cannot stand joy unless they are the ones assigning it. When Mara told her she was no longer welcome in our home for the foreseeable future, Donna started crying and asking how one misunderstanding had become exile. That word told me everything. Misunderstanding. As if we had misread shattered glass. As if the note on the floor had floated in from another house. As if a child standing in her socks beside something she loved was open to interpretation. Over the next 2 days, the family chorus began. One aunt said Donna was old-fashioned and we should show grace. A cousin texted Mara that mothers sometimes go too far when they worry. Mara's brother suggested Donna pay for the materials and we all move on. That suggestion bothered me more than I expected, because money was the least interesting part of the loss. You cannot Venmo back a Saturday morning. You cannot replace the exact version of a child who believed adults would leave her joy alone. You cannot rebuy the sentence, "It looks like it knows where home is," from the first night she saw the light turn on. That is what the comments under the source story understood so clearly. People were not angry because a hobby item got broken. They were angry because an adult used destruction to rank her authority above a child's memory. That is why stories like this spread. Not because the object is expensive, because contempt becomes visible. By the end of the week, Wren had stopped asking whether Donna was sorry. That hurt in its own way. She had already figured out the answer. On Saturday, she came to me with her sketchbook and said, "I don't want to remake the lighthouse exactly." I asked what she wanted instead. She opened to a page where she had drawn a crooked little harbor with 6 tiny lit windows along the shore. "A whole row of them," she said. "So if someone breaks one, the others are still there." I had to look away for a second after she said that. Because children are always building theories about safety for the materials adults leave lying around. So that is what we started. Not a replacement, a harbor, small houses with mismatched roofs, sea glass windows and warm lights in each one. Mara joined us the second weekend, quietly at first, then fully. No apologies as bandages, no speeches, just sanding wood, handing over glue, and staying long enough to make something steady. We have not invited Donna back. I don't know when we will, maybe not for a very long time, because once someone is willing to destroy a child's memory to prove a point, the question is no longer whether they approve of your parenting style, your hobbies, or your home. The question is whether they can be trusted anywhere near the tender parts of your life. And the answer to that one, at least for now, is no.
Thank you for watching. If this story pulled you in, do me one favor. Hit like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so the next one finds you the moment it drops. Remember, nothing is ever just what it seems. See you on the next one.